Come on, babe, why don't we paint the town? And all that jazz, I'm gonna rouge my knees and roll my stockings down. And all that jazz, start the car. I know a whoopee spot where the gin is cold, but the piano's hot. It's just a noisy hall where there's a nightly brawl and all that jazz. Slick your hair and wear your buckled shoes. And all that jazz, I hear that Father Dip is gonna blow the blues. And all that jazz, hold on, hun, we're gonna bunny hug. I bought some aspirin down at United Drug in case we shake apart and need a brand new start to do that jazz. Oh, you're gonna see your Sheba shimmy shake and all that jazz. Oh, she's gonna shimmy till her garters break and all that jazz. Show her where to park her girdle. Oh, her mother's blood will curdle if she'd hear her baby's queer for all that jazz. Find a flask, we're playing fast and loose, and all that jazz. Right up here is where I store the juice, and all that jazz. Come on, babe, we're gonna brush the sky. I bet you Lucky Lindy never flew so high, 'cause in the stratosphere, how could he lend an ear to all that jazz? No, I'm no one's wife, but oh, I love my life and all that jazz. That jazz.
Miss Lisa Prieto at the microphone, Miss Emmy Stefanov at the keyboard. Tonight, we are celebrating the musicals of John Kander and Fred Ebb. That is from one of their biggest hits ever, a show called Chicago, the Oscar winning best film, the long running revival, which is the longest running revival ever in Broadway history, over 25 years running, and of course, the original production back in the 1970s, which was a wonderful thing starring Cheetah Rivera and Gwen Verdon and the great Jerry Orbach. Chicago is based on a true story. Did you know that, Emmy?
I did actually.
Yeah. Two ladies in Chicago, one named Beulah and one named Belva, both killed their boyfriends and both had these big sensationalist trials and both got acquitted and both went into vaudeville. They didn't do well in vaudeville. They didn't last very long in vaudeville, but they did get away with it. And the song "We Both Reached for the Gun" from Chicago is based on an actual statement. She said, "We both grabbed for the gun." Um, and it's the woman that wrote the play that the Chicago musical is based on was a reporter at that time in Chicago. And she wrote all about it and these sensationalist things. And they had the Sob sisters like Mary Sunshine and the dirty lawyers and all the stuff that's in the musical really was part of that. It was an award winning Broadway show in 1925. Then there was a 1927 silent movie version of that same story. Then there was a 1942 film with Ginger Rogers called Roxy Hart, and that's what Bob Fosse and Gwen Verdon saw in the Late Late Show and got the idea to do Chicago. But it took a long time to get the show on Broadway because Maureen Watkins Dallas, who had written the original stories, had given all that up, had found religion and said that was terrible and she should have never been a part of that. And they waited and waited until she passed away. And then her children said, "Let's say you're the rights." And that's how Chicago came to be. Very famously, during the early beginnings of Chicago, Bob Fosse had his heart attack, very famous heart attack, which he sort of chronicles in his autobiographical film, All That Jazz. The show was postponed, and then it opened on Broadway in the shadow of another show. And I think the original Chicago run would have lasted longer, but all the attention was going to another little show at that time called A Chorus Line, which was also a spectacular show. Uh, Fast forward to the 90s, and they do this production for one weekend at Encores. And it is such a hit that they do it again, and then they bring it to Broadway, and it's been running there ever since, with the exception of right now. But it's going to reopen, and it's been playing all over the world. So these songs that for many years I knew, and a lot of aficionados knew, but a lot of other people that didn't get a chance to hear them, now they're out there everywhere in the world. So Lisa, how are you doing tonight? You doing well?
I'm great.
You're
Yeah.
doing. Do you ever do any Kander and Ebb shows?
Yes, I've done a production of Cabaret.
Hmm.
I think that might be it. Yeah. Hmm.
Okay. What about you? I mean, I know you have. You've done
I
Cabaret
have
in
done
Chicago.
cabaret. I've done
You've
Chicago.
done Curtains.
Curtains. What else did I do? Oh gosh, it's been
70 Girls,
70. Oh
70.
yeah, 70 girls.
70 Girls. So tonight we're going to look at some of these shows and the stories behind the shows. I want to sing a song now that they wrote for Billy Flynn. Billy Flynn is the lawyer character in Chicago, originally played by none other than Jerry Orbach. And each number in the play Chicago, the musical, is done as a vaudeville act. We Both Reach for the Gun is a ventriloquist act. There's the torch song, Funny Honey. All these things mimic what you might have seen in a vaudeville show, including When You're Good to Mama, which is a Red Hot Mama kind of song. And All I Care About was actually a striptease. And it's a very clever striptease. I will not be stripping tonight. I save you all that. But it's a very clever striptease where Jerry Orbach was taking off clothes and the girls were surrounding him with feather fans. And mysteriously, things were disappearing, and he didn't even have to use his hands. Very clever little piece. Um, and it's all about a man who loves being a lawyer and promises that he's going to really save these girls. Here we go. I don't care about expensive things, cashmere coats, diamond rings don't mean a thing. All I care about is love. That's what I'm here for. I don't care for wearing silk cravats, ruby studs, satin spats. Honest to God, all I care about is love. Give me two eyes of blue, softly saying, I need you. Let me see her standing there, and honest mister, I'm a millionaire. I don't care for any fine attire, Vanderbilt might admire. No, no, not me. All I care about is love. Honest to God, all I care about is love. That's what I'm here for. Honest to God, all I care about is love. All I care about is love. Show me long raven hair flowing down about to there. When I see her running free, keep your money, that's enough for me. I don't care for driving Packard cars or smoking long black cigars. No, no, not me. All I care about is doing the guy in who's picking on you, twisting the wrist that's turning the screw. All I care about is love. And that is how Billy is introduced in the show. Now, Kander and Ebb were not overnight sensations. They did not step out of the shadows and into the limelight. They did a lot of work going up the ladder like everybody else does in show business. And they were both writing with other people in the 1950s. Now, you have to understand, John Kander and Fred Ebb could not have been two more different personalities. Fred Ebb was a very a fast talking New Yorker. Kander is and still is a very soft spoken Midwestern man. And they were both working on musicals on Broadway with other people. And a man named Tommy Valando, music publisher, thought maybe they would make a good team. Little did Tommy Valando know when he introduced them, they would become the longest running team on Broadway of a composer and lyricist. They would run over 45 years. And some of those shows are still being created even after the passing away of Fred Ebb. They're still putting shows together they had started working on, and they're trying to finish the whole oeuvre. Um, they started out writing specialty songs. They couldn't get a Broadway show. They tried to write one about immigration. They tried this. They tried. They weren't working, and so they were writing special material for friends of theirs to do on television. And this song is the song that became their first hit. It was sung on the Perry Como show by a lady named Sandy Stewart. And they sang it one night on Perry Como, and within the next couple of days, the network got about 10,000 calls saying, what is this song? Where did it come from? Who wrote it? How can I get the music? And please, I hope you make a record of it. And that little Sandy Stewart song by John Kander and Fred Ebb was their first big hit. The name of the song is called My Coloring Book, and Lisa's going to sing it for us tonight.
In case you fancy coloring books, and lots of people do, I've a new one for you. A most unusual coloring book, the kind you never see. Crayons ready, very well. Begin to color me. These are the eyes that watched him as he walked away. Color them gray. This is the heart that thought he would always be true. Color it blue. These are the arms that held him and touched him, then lost him somehow. Color them empty now. These are the beads I wore until she came between. Color them green. This is the room I sleep in and walk in and weep in and hide in that nobody sees. Color it lonely, please. This is the man, the one I depended upon. Color him gone.
Beautiful song, wonderful little song, and it stood out. 10,000 calls and letters to the network. And suddenly, Kander and Ebb were a name. It would take them about 5 more years to actually be a big name on Broadway, but they kept trying. They kept trying. Now, they wrote this special material for these different performers to perform on these shows, like Perry Como's show. And one of their good friends, Fred Ebb's good friend, was a lady named Kay Ballard. You may remember Kay Ballard, very funny comedian. And she's always fighting about her weight. So they wanted to write her a song. And she sang this song on Perry Como show. And Fred Ebb would often sing this song at parties. And John would accompany him, try to see if maybe a great producer would be there, and maybe they'd get their big break. And one time they were playing the song at a party. Fred Ebb, by the way, was very effusive. If you've ever seen him, he's the one that taught Liza Minnelli how to be Liza Minnelli, always using his hands and very, very colorful man. Uh, he's singing this song and giving it his all. And Fred loved vaudeville, so a lot of their songs have a root in vaudeville. And at the end of the song, the lady hosting the party walked over and shook his hand, and in it was $3. So for the rest of their whole life, they called this their $3 song because they made $3 off of it. But it has had a life in some music reviews and things, and it's a great parody of a love song. And we're gonna do it for you right now. There's a lady living somewhere. Where it is, I do not know. But I long to write and tell her that I love her so. I believe I could do mayhem. Yes, I might destroy myself if I ever found her missing from my grocer's shelf. Sarah Lee, Sarah Lee, your brioche just fractures me. Give me a taste of your cherry Danish. My mother bakes well, but you can't compare her not to Sarah Lee. Sarah Lee. There's no H, just Sarah Lee, but that's okay by me. I love her cheesecake, white as pearl. And did I mention that chocolate swirl from the kitchen of the one I love? Wonderful Sarah Lee. Sing with me.
Sarah Lee.
And it throws you right to my soul.
Sarah Lee.
When I'm chewing that finger roll.
There's no
I gotta tell you, for goodness sake, there's never been a better banana cake. My cousin Milton works at the Hilton. He caters banquets, but at each affair he'll swear by
Sarah Lee.
Oh, you know what I mean?
Sarah Lee.
Aren't her brownies obscene? There's no H, just Sarah Lee, but that's okay by me. Cause I'm living in paradise when I'm nibbling that apple spice from the kitchen of the one I love, a wonderful Sarah, a beautiful Sarah, Sarale, Sarah Lee. Thank you, Evie. We didn't warn Will that you were going to sing in that song.
Oh, we did not.
But he was ready. His
But that
finger,
is one of our favorite
his
songs.
finger. We got Will Toro tonight on the controls. Sometimes he's out of control, but we can't help that. So these guys are trying to make it in New York. They're trying to get a Broadway show, and they find a property. And the director of the show is going to be George Abbott, who lived to be over 101 and directed shows on Broadway up to age 100. At this time, he would have been in his 70s, maybe going into his 80s. And there was a book about the Depression, about a young girl in the Depression era who unwittingly becomes a communist because she falls in love with the guy and doesn't realize the kind of meetings he's going to. It was definitely an old-fashioned musical comedy. And the name of the show was called Flora the Red Menace. It would win the Tony Award for Liza Minnelli. And that time, she'd be the youngest person ever to get the Best Actress Tony Award at age 18 for her leading role in this show, Flora the Red Menace. I hate to tell you, though, the show only ran 1 month. Just about a month, a little over a month, maybe. But they put out a cast album, and it opened the door for Liza for future projects, and also opened the door for Kander and Ebb for future projects. And it was a fun little show, and with a really bouncy score and some pretty songs, too, that Liza and others would do throughout the years. And today, I've asked Lisa to do one of the best songs in the show. And it's all about a moment in the show where Flora gets her big break, gets her big chance for a job, and she thinks it's going to be fireworks and explosions and marching bands in her head. But she realizes, no, sometimes when great things happen, it's a quiet thing. And this is from Flora the Red Man. This is the very first Broadway score written by John Kander and Fred Ebb.
When it all comes true, just the way you planned, it's funny, but the bells don't ring. It's a quiet thing when you hold the world in your trembling hand. You'd think you'd hear a choir sing. It's a quiet thing. There are no exploding fireworks. Where's the roaring of the crowds? Maybe it's the strange new atmosphere way up here among the clouds. But I don't hear the drums, I don't hear the bands, all the things I'm told these moments bring. Happiness comes in on tiptoe. Well, what do you know? It's a quiet thing, a very quiet thing.
Very nice. Now, this being a George Abbott show, it was very broad in the book, very broad in the comedy, and there were a lot of funny supporting characters. The man that Flora falls in love with has trouble of completing. He stutters a lot. He has trouble completing his sentences. He actually has a duet with her where he puts pebbles in his mouth to try to speak better, and he sings the whole song with pebbles in his mouth. And I would do that tonight, but I'm afraid I'll swallow the pebbles. We don't want to do that. There are different people in her life, including there's a woman named Ada, who is one of the leaders of this communist movement in New York, and she talks about I blew up a bus today and this and that. Very silly comedy. Not everybody understood what this show was about, but there's also a couple friends of hers who are trying to put together a vaudeville act. And he's a cowboy and she's the lady, and they're going to call the group the act the Cowboy and the Lady, and they've got a comedy song. And this is a good example of the sense of humor. You've already heard it with Sarah Lee, but Fred Ebb had a great sense of humor, loved to tell jokes. Our good friend Rocco never has a story about Fred that doesn't make you smile and laugh about how colorful this man was and how much life was in him. And this is a song called Knock Knock. And these are some very bad knock knock jokes. It is Father's Day, so you almost call them dad jokes if you want to. I will be playing the cowboy, and you will be playing the lady, also known as Ada. Miss Emmy Stefanov.
I will attempt it. Here we
You're
go.
going to attempt it? All right. If we jump the track, we'll come back. We'll come right back.
You ready?
There we go.
Knock, knock.
Who's there? Iva who?
I've a feeling we're as good as gold. Truly. Knock, knock.
Who's there?
Norma
who?
Normally I wouldn't be so bold, but when you're near me, it's clear I'm knocked on my ear. My pulses begin to quiver. I just want to stop and give a knock knock.
Who's there?
Justine.
Justine who?
Just in case you're love they're looking for. Wherever you are, I'll stay pining away. Forever knock, knock, knocking at your door.
I got this. Here we go.
All right, here we go.
Knock, knock.
Who's there?
Arkansas.
Arkansas who?
Arkansas to see you side by side, honey.
I like it.
Knock, knock.
Who's there?
Saddle.
Saddle who?
Saddle down with me and be my bride. For when you're near me like this, right handy to kiss, my heart goes right off its rocker. I just gotta stop and knock a knock knock.
Who's there?
Heifer,
Heifer who?
heifer heart, and hear me, I implore. And when you go home, don't leave. Prepare to receive, 'cause I'll be knock knock knocking at your door.
All right, got some more.
All right, here we go.
Ready? Here we go.
I'm ready.
Knock, knock.
Who's there?
Picasso.
Picasso who?
Picasso, you, there's stardust in my eye. For when you're near me, it's clear I'm knocked on my ear. My pulses begin to quiver.
I just gotta stop and give a knock knock.
Who's there?
Grant's tomb.
Grants to who?
Grants to me the kiss I waited for. And from then on, dear, to you, I'm sticking like glue.
Forever knock, 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 knocking.
Knock, 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 knocking.
Knock, 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 knocking at your
door. Thank you. Can't knock that one. Oh. Knock, knock, knock. There's great songs in that show. Great songs in Flora. They're making their name, and it makes everybody notice Liza Minnelli. She's already done a few off-Broadway things. Now she's got a Broadway award, Tony Award, and they start writing special material for her. Special material is like the songs we did earlier that aren't necessarily written for a show. They might be written to do in a concert, or written to do in a party or something like that. For Liza, they wrote a ton of special material. Almost everything she did, they had a brand new song in the 60s, the 70s, and even into the 80s and then the 1990s would be written by Kander, and Fred would direct her and teach her. You know, he did everything from her wardrobe to her hair to how she styled herself. And this is a song that he wrote for her. He wrote two great songs in that era for her, and many, many more. But one was called Liza with a Z, where he explained her name. It's Liza with a Z, not Lisa with an S, because Lisa with an S goes snaz. You're Lisa with an S,
That's
not
right.
Liza with a Z. It's simple as can you see, Liza? And when she finally was getting really famous, they did a television special. Bob Fosse directed it. They rented a theater. They rehearsed it. Singer Sewing Machine sponsored the whole thing. They had Kander and Ebb write a bunch of new songs, and they used a lot of classical songs, classic pop songs, and it was called Liza with a Z. And it was just an outstanding thing. Fosse would win an Emmy for directing this. And John and Fred wanted to have some really knockout numbers, and they wrote this song for her about a real life incident that they allegedly said had happened. We're going to stand up for this one because it's got a lot of stuff. And I dedicate this to Emmy and my friend Nicola, because they're both from an area of the world that is otherwise known, used to be known as Yugoslavia. And it's one of the few songs that mentions Yugoslavia in it.
Trivia question.
Trivia question, yes. And it is a song about a lady who can't find a husband, and it's called Ring Them Bells. You ready? Gather around, I've got a story to tell about a Manhattan lady that I know very well. She lives in Five Riverside, her name is Shirley DeVore. She traveled around the world to meet the guy next door. Now there was trouble inside apartment 29E, because Shirley's mother and dad were as upset as can be. They said, I hate to complain, dear, and I don't want to grouse, but you're nearly 32, you should get out of the house. You gotta ring them bells, you gotta ring them bells, you gotta make them sing and really ring them bells. It's such a happy thing to hear them ting-a-ling. You gotta ring them bells. Now, Shirley was 31, which she was loath to admit, and she had never been loved, which didn't thrill her a bit. And so she went and she thought for hours on end. She said, I'll go to Chase Manhattan where I've got me a friend. And so she borrowed 1,000 called TWA and told her mother and dad that she was off and away. I'm gonna travel the continent a month, maybe two, and haul me home a huz if it's the last thing I do. I'm gonna ring them bells, I'm gonna ring them bells, I'm gonna make them sing and really ring them bells. It's such a happy thing to hear them ting-a-ling, and I'm gonna ring them bells. So she went to Europe. She met a Londoner first, but they did not hit it off, for every time she approached, he got a bronchial cough. And so she went to Madrid and met a handsome signor, but he liked to throw the bull and he was no matador. She also bombed out in Brussels, in Mallorca and Rome, till someone said, oh, try Dubrovnik, dear, before you go home, because it's a kind of a town where you'll be likely to fall, and all the Tony cognoscenti find those Balkans a ball. You've got to ring them bells, you've got to ring them bells, you've got to make them sing and really ring them bells. It's such a happy thing to hear them ting-a-ling. You've got to ring them bells. And so she went to Dubrovnik, and the very first day she saw a guy on the beach who took her reason away. Yes, it was love at first sight and quite a beautiful scene. She said, my name is Cheryl DeVore. He said, I'm Norm Saperstein. She said, are you from New York? He said, that can't be denied. I've got a swell junior 3 at number 5 Riverside. 5? 5 Riverside Drive in New York? That's where you live? That's where I live. As if that wasn't enough, poor Shirley thought she'd gone deaf when he told her his apartment there was 29F. Yes, she was E, he was F, and they had not even met. They had to travel the world to Yugoslavia yet. He'd always been right next door, but she would never have known. If she hadn't tried Dubrovnik, she would still be alone. Well, there's a moral to learn from little Shirley DeVore, who had to travel the world to meet the man right next door. You girls who live in apartments, don't just stare at the wall. Open up the door and hurry out in the hall. And ring them bells. Come on now, ring them bells. You gotta make them sing and really ring them bells. It's such a happy thing to hear them ting-a-ling. You gotta swing them, ring them, swing them, ring them bells. Thank you, me. The only song I know with Yugoslavia in it.
I agree.
All right, I'm gonna lower this microphone here. There we go. Did you know that song?
I may have heard you sing it once before.
Oh, let me see. Oh,
I'm
well.
not super familiar with it though.
It's a funny song,
It
and it
is.
was featured in Liza with a Z, and it's just a great number, and it sort of based on truth, but it's so good you don't care if it's really true or not. Have you been to Dubrovnik?
I have actually.
What is Dubrovnik like?
It is on the coast, so I mean, like everything, and it's a part of Yugoslavia where it's Croatia now. But back in the day, it was Yugoslavia. Very pretty, tons of old castles type buildings, and
Okay,
tons of stone. So
okay, but people would go there
Historic.
to go to the beach.
Oh
go to-
yeah, to this day they do.
hang out.
To this day they do.
Well, Kander and Ebb are working toward their next show. Flora the Red Mantis didn't make it, but Hal Prince has approached them about working on another show. And it is based on stories of a writer named Christopher Isherwood, who lived in Berlin in the 20s and 30s and wrote many short stories about it. And that was turned into a play called I Am a Camera, which was made into a film. And now they were trying to turn it into a musical. And ultimately, the show would be called Cabaret. This is a show that has such a varied background, and not just a background, but also the history of it since it's been done. It's been rewritten and redone so many ways and so many times. I don't have time tonight to tell you all of it, but it is an amazing show about a woman named Sally Bowles and an American who has different names depending on the version that you see. His name might be Clifford Bradshaw, or it might be Brian. He might be gay. He might be straight. She might be British, or she might be American. Depends on the production on how they wrote it for that thing. But anyway, it's this story of this nightclub singer and this writer who wind up cohabiting, and the things that happen to them as the Nazis rise to power and the blindness of so many people not paying attention to what was going on. A lot of people, when the show opened on Broadway in 1966, a lot of people were taken aback. They didn't quite understand what they were seeing because the set was real but not real. And they actually had a giant mirror on the back of the stage of the set designed by Boris Aronson, would sometimes tilt down and show the audience themselves. Um, how Prince said the inspiration for the way the show finally wound up was seeing a picture of a group of angry American Aryans snarling at a black girl trying to go to school in the South into a white school. And he said, that's where I got the idea for what happened back in pre-World War II and how it would have been the feeling, the oppression. It has got a great score. And we're going to do a couple songs from it now. We'll do a couple later. But this is how the show would have opened with a young man who was an overnight success with the show, although he'd been working in show business by 15 or 20 years by this time. His name was Joel Grey, and he would play this role on stage in the original production and also in the film. And this is how he started the show. Willkommen, bienvenue, welcome. Fremde, étranger, stranger. Glücklich zu sehen, je suis enchanté. Happy to see you, bleibe, reste, stay und sage willkommen, bienvenue, welcome im Cabaret, oh Cabaret, to Cabaret. And he would talk to the audience and say things like, leave your troubles outside. Outside it is winter, but in here it is so hot. Every night we have a battle with the girls to keep them from taking off all of their clothing. So who knows? Tonight we may lose the battle. And he invites you to join in, and one by one he introduces you to all the different characters of the cabaret, including the lead singer, Sally Bowles, who becomes the central character of this story. And she is a girl that has been around a block a few times. And our writer friend, who's the romantic lead, falls in love with her, and they have this affair, which does not work out well. But she has hope. Despite all the things that are going wrong in her life, she has hope. And when they made the film version of Cabaret, they had a song that Kander had already written for Liza Minnelli that they wanted her to interpolate into the film. Now, let me tell you a little thing about Liza Minnelli. Yeah, you can stop vamping.
I enjoyed it.
Liza auditioned for the role of Sally Bowles on Broadway, and she was a dear friend already of John Kander and Fred Ebb. And Hal Prince said no. And they said, why not? He said, she's too good. He said, I want a girl who can carry a tune and is a good actress, but not necessarily a great performer and a great singer, because why would she be in this third-rate nightclub? She'd be a star. And so Liza Minnelli was not used on the Broadway show. But a few years later, when Bob Fosse was making the film, they said, forget all that. We want the top entertainer in the world to be this part. And that's why Liza Minnelli's in the film. And Jill Hayworth was on stage. And trivia question, when they did the original London production 1 year later after Broadway, who played Sally Bowles? Anybody know?
I don't know.
Very famous actress today. A young actress by the name of Judi Dench was Sally Bowles in the London production, 1966, 1967. So they had written this song for Liza for one of her albums, and they put it into the film as a torch song. And most productions of Cabaret since then have included this song. And it's an absolutely wonderful torch song up there with The Man I Love and so many of those great songs. And it is called Maybe This Time. And Lisa's going to do it for us now.
Maybe this time I'll be lucky. Maybe this time he'll stay. Maybe this time, for the first time, love won't hurry away. He will hold me fast. I'll not a loser anymore, like the last time and the time before. Everybody loves a winner, so nobody loved me. Lady peaceful, lady happy, that's what I long to be. All the odds are in my favor. Something's bound to begin. It's gonna happen sometime. Maybe this time I'll win. Everybody loves a winner, so nobody loves me. Lady peaceful, lady happy, that's what I long to be. All the odds are in my favor. Something's bound to begin. It's gonna happen sometime. Maybe this time I'll win.
What's it like to sing a torch song for you?
I really like torch. You know this.
I
I
know
really
this.
like torch songs. You give me a lot of torch songs.
But you do
There's-
them well.
Well, there's a lot of emotion to dig into, and usually the melodies are so kind of haunting. They really kind of pull at your emotions.
And Kander and Ebb are very good at writing songs you remember.
Yes.
You know, once you've heard them, you remember it. And they write a wide range of songs, of course. And Cabaret was a huge hit, being performed all over the world, translated in about 22 different languages. They're still doing it today. So many variations of it. When I said earlier, depending on which one you see, you might see different collections of songs and different variations on the characters, depending on the version, whether it's the Donmer Warehouse version or it's the this version or that version. They're all good though, and they just keep changing it and rolling the dice. We'll see what happens next with Cabaret. Um, the challenge when you have a show that's as big as Cabaret and as surprising, even though Flora was a cute show, nobody remembered it, but Cabaret was what they were talking about, is your next show, and your show after that, and your show after that, and your show after that. For John and Fred, it would be a whole bunch of shows before they would have another big talked about hit. Now they were still getting paid and they were still making, getting films made and things like that. So uh, they weren't flops per se, but these were shows that didn't have long lives, and some of them had beautiful songs and beautiful music. And tonight, I thought we'd resurrect some of the songs from that period between Cabaret and Chicago, where on Broadway the shows didn't take off for as long a time, didn't make it as much. And this next one is the next show they would do. This is a musical called The Happy Time. The Happy Time had been a play in the 1950s, and they bought the rights to the play. And by the time the show opened on Broadway, it had no resemblance to it, except that it took uh, part in French Canada, and that's it. Everything else was different about the play. It was about a photographer in the musical version, played by Robert Goulet, who had become a big hit after Camelot a few years earlier. He's a world famous photographer who's come home to a small town and his bickering family and the girl that he left behind and the nephew who wants to quit school and travel with him as his assistant. And it's a memory piece. It actually starts with a song that's taking him back into the past. And it's a beautiful song. Liza and others have recorded this song. And I want to do this for you now. It's a title song. It's called The Happy Time. And then there's a beautiful little ballad they wrote for Goulet to sing in the show where he's walking through his town. Now, interestingly enough, Gower Champion was the director of this show. And Gower Champion was a um, burgeoning photographer. He loved doing photography. So the concept of the show on Broadway, all these screens and projections of things, since it was a show about a photographer. So the sets were very minimalistic, just furniture things coming out, and there would be different projections that would happen on the screens that Champion took himself. It was quite interesting a concept to do. It's not done very often. The last production I even saw that was at the Signature Theater in Arlington, Virginia. But it's a beautiful score, and many of these songs get performed. This is the Happy Time title song, and then a song called Among My Yesterdays. Remember the Christmas morning long ago, the frosted glass, the dancing snow, the happy time. Remember the painted horse, the carousel, the chocolate kiss, the caramel, the happy time. Remember a pale pink sky, your first Easter hat. And if you should ask me why, the reason I ask you this is that I want to remember you, remembering the happy time. Remember the day you found the dollar bill while roller skating down the hill, the happy time. Remember the compliment you once received, the lie you told they all believed, the happy time. Remember a long, deep sigh, a tentative kiss. And if you should ask me why, the reason I ask you that is this: I'm longing to see you smile and hear you laugh, so I can have the photograph and remember you, remembering the happy time. Was it really all that sweet in that house and along that street? Memory clouds in 1,000 ways, walking among my yesterdays. Did it happen? Was it real? Eyes can see what the heart can feel. Visions vanish beneath the gaze, walking along my yesterdays. Hold, hold, hold. Wait for me. Light the picture. Let me see. Souvenirs of the past remain. Bits of pleasure and scraps of pain. Love may fade, but the perfume stays, walking among my yesterdays. Hold, hold, hold. Yesterdays. Is that a pretty song?
It's beautiful.
Now, in the show, the young boy that was Robert Goulet's nephew was played by an actor by the name of Michael Rupert. Michael Rupert was a teenager when they had the auditions. And Gower Champion, once he became successful, decided he wanted to rehearse all his shows in California and not rehearse in New York. And then you'd take the show on the road and bring it to New York. He just loved the California life so much, like to play tennis and do all that sort of stuff. And they had the auditions in California, and this young man came in to the audition, and he was waiting in the waiting room before, and he was a teenager, and another kid came in and didn't bring any music, and this young man gave him his book and said, "Use any of my songs. I don't. You're welcome to it." And the casting people saw this. And they told this to the director, Gower Champion, and he said, he's our BB. That's exactly the kind of personality this kid should be. And that's how Michael Rupert got his first Broadway show. Later, he would be the replacement Pippin on Broadway and star in falsettos and all these other shows. But that was his first big chance. And auditioning as a kid, teenager in California for this Robert Goulet show. And he happened to say, and that's rare. I mean, you know, at auditions, how many people are out there in the lobby saying, here, use my music to take the part that I want. But he was different, and they liked that. They needed that quality. The show didn't last very long, even though it had David Wayne in it, a wonderful Broadway character, and so many wonderful people in it. But the music is terrific, and I encourage people to listen to it. It's on Spotify. If you have Spotify, you can listen to the entire cast album, which is only about 44 minutes long. Now, that didn't make it. So now they start to do their next project, and they decide they want to do a musical version of Zorba the Greek. Zorba the Greek had been a very popular book and a popular film with Anthony Quinn and Lila Kudrova, and they decided they're going to make it into a Broadway show. And shows were getting darker. After Cabaret in the mid-'60s, they were getting darker. People were taking off more clothes on Broadway, and lots of things were putting into the shows. And this was a version of Zorba. It would star Herschel Bernardi and Maria Konovala as the Madame Hortense, and it had this storytelling within a story. It opens in a Greek tavern, and they're all singing and dancing and smoking and doing all this stuff, and then they stop and decide to tell this story about what life is, and it becomes the story of Zorba. And I wanted to sing this song from the show because it's a very dark look at life, and it sort of matches that way of that story. Zorba is the one that sees everything as possible and anything can happen in the world, and the others push him down a lot in the show. Uh, the show did not last too long on Broadway. Part of the reason was there were other competition that was more lighthearted. Plus, um, both leading character women would die in the show, one of old age and one murdered in the show, which some people that bothered them a lot too. So this was not for the faint of heart. It's not Carrie the musical, but it has its things. But it had great songs, and this opening song is called "Life Is," and they've just all bickered in the tavern about what life is, and then this woman steps forward and she says this. Now, understand, this is not my philosophy. This is the philosophy of the opening song from Zorba. Life is what you do while you're waiting to die. Life is how the time goes by. Life is where you wait while you're waiting to leave. Life is where you grin and grieve. Having if you're lucky, wanting if you're not, looking for the ruby underneath the rot, hungry for the pilaf for someone else's pot, but that's the only choice you got. Life is where you stand just before you are flat. Life is only that, Mr. Life is simply that, Mr. That, and nothing more than that. Life is what you feel till you can't feel at all. Life is where you fly and fall. Running for the shelter, naked in the snow, learning there are teardrops everywhere you go, finding it's the mud that makes the roses grow, but that's the only choice you know. Life is what you do while you're waiting to die. This is how the time by. Now, as I said, Zorba's outlook is completely different, but this is how the play starts, and not everybody can grasp that part of it. It was not a success on Broadway, and then about 15 years later, they revived it on Broadway and on tour with Anthony Quinn from the movie and Lila Kudrova from the movie, and it was a success. So you never know when a hit can be a flop can be a hit. But I thought this song has that dark view of life, which Fred could summon up very easily. But now this song is the opposite, with a very uplifting song. And this is was featured in Liza's with the Z, but it's actually from a show that we did here a couple of years ago about geriatric shoplifters called 70 Girls 70. Life keeps happening every day. Say yes when opportunities come your way. You can't start wondering what to say. You'll never win if you never play. Say yes. There's mink and marigolds right outside, and long white Cadillacs you can ride. But there's nothing gained if there's nothing tried. Say yes. Yes. Don't say why. Say why not? What lies beyond what is not. So what? Say yes, yes, yes I can, yes I am. I messed that up. I said yes I can, and yes I do cam on Zoom, but that doesn't make any sense. Here we go. Yes I am. No, can. Can you see your words? There you go. Okay, here we go. I got it. Yes, I can. Yes, I will. Yes, I'll take a sip. Yes, I'll touch. Yes, of course. Yes, how nice. Yes, I'd happily. Thank you very much. Yes. Oh, yes. There's lots of chaff, but there's lots of wheat. Say yes. You might get mugged as you walk the street, but on the other hand, you might greet that handsome stranger you long to meet. Say yes, yes. Don't say why, say why not. What lies beyond what is not. So what? Say yes. Yes. Yes, I'll walk. Yes, I'll look. Yes, I'd love to do such and such. Yes, I'll try. Yes, I'll dare. Yes, I'll fly. Yes, I'll share. Yes, I'll happily. Thank you very much. Yes. Oh, yes. Oh, yes. You can't look back on a chance that's lost. Say yes. The dice mean nothing unless they're tossed. The throw is usually worth the cost. The hope of summer denies the frost. Say yes. Yes, I am. Yes, I'll be. Yes, I'll go. Oh, yes. 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 There we go. All right. I thought those two pair well together. Life is and say yes. Two different philosophies of life. One from Zorba the Greek, Zorba the musical, and one from 70 Girls 70. You got all that?
Yes.
Okay, good. We're coming back to you soon. We're very lucky to have Lisa here today. We had a different plan, and one of our performers took ill, and I called Lisa. We called Lisa a few days ago and said, "Can you come and join us for Kander and Evan?" She said, "Yes, oh yes, oh yes." But next time she'll change her phone number. I know. So
No.
you played Lorraine in our last production of
I
70 Girls
did.
70.
I did.
And they had you on a piano and they were rolling you around and you're singing and
Oh,
dancing. You had a cat up there on the piano
I
and
did have a
everything else.
cat. Yes.
And that's a big part. There's a lot of fancy fingering in the show for Lorraine on the keyboards, and it's absolutely you have to have a very talented person to play Lorraine, and you fit the bill. Although you're about 40 years too young for the role, really, because you're
There's
supposed to be
makeup for that.
70
you
girls,
know.
70, and there were a lot of great songs. And one of my favorite songs is a song that was written. This show was from early 1970s about the modernization of modern dining and the fact that it's very different with fast food and takeout and all the things from how it used to be. And when you sit down, and the two waitresses sing this song in the show who work at a little cafeteria in the basement and in the lobby of a retirement home, and they can't quite grasp what the world's doing. And this is a very clever little song from John and Fred called Coffee in a Cardboard Cup. The trouble with the world today, it seems to me, is coffee in a cardboard cup. The trouble with the affluent society is coffee in a cardboard cup. No one's ever casual or nonchalant. No one waits a minute in a restaurant. No one wants a waitress passing pleasantries like afternoon, how you been? Would you like the special, please? The trouble with the world today, it seems to me, is everything is hurry up. It's rush it through, don't be slow, BLT on the right to go, and coffee. I think they said coffee. I know they said coffee in a cardboard cup. The trouble with the helter-skelter life we lead is coffee in a cardboard cup. The trouble that psychologists have all agreed is coffee in a cardboard cup. Tell me what could possibly be drearier than seaboard from the Belnord cafeteria. Seems to me a gentleman would much prefer a how you been, what you like, would you like the special, sir? The trouble with the world today, it seems to me, is everything is hurry up. There's ready whip, there's instant tea, there's minute rice, and my oh me, there's coffee. I think they said coffee. I know they said coffee. I'm sure they said coffee. I know they said coffee in a cardboard cup. Hurry up. All right. Woo.
Wow.
Whoa. I'm getting lightheaded.
Too much coffee.
Not enough coffee.
In a cardboard
Caffeine
cup.
is our friend. Now, we're they had a lot of shows in this period. The Act came out. They had a hit for a while with a show called Woman of the Year, which starred Lauren Bacall. Lauren Bacall, who could not really sing, won 2 Tonys for Best Actress in a Musical, first for Applause and then for Woman of the Year. And when she left the show, they brought in Raquel Welch to play her part, who did it. They had a whole different show with Raquel Welch than they did with Lauren Bacall. And then they brought in Debbie Reynolds to take over the part. And Debbie had an episode one night where she just went blank on stage and walked off the stage. And later in the paper, she said in interviews that she was suffering from something called global amnesia, whatever that is. So, and that was the end of Woman of the Year. I did get to do a production of it once. It doesn't get done very often, but we did get to do it. So it's got some great songs. They wrote a show called The Act for Liza Minnelli, which was basically an act. And it was ostensibly directed by her boyfriend at the time, who was the movie director, Martin Scorsese. But he didn't understand how Broadway worked, so he was trying to direct it like a movie and didn't understand that you got to do it every night. So eventually he was let go, and they brought in Gower Champion to try to fix the show, and some great songs in that too. But this whole period, up and down, up and down. But throughout it all, there was always a standard of quality between John and Fred, and the songs are terrific. Um, Even in some of these short-lived shows that you don't hear much about anymore. Like The Rink was another one with Cheetah Rivera and Liza Minnelli, which had some great, great songs and some great, great things in it. And they were just, the top of the list. I'll take a Kander and Ebb song from a flop over almost any new song today. And I'm sorry to say that, but it's true because there's heart, there's comedy, and there's pathos in there too when it needs to be. And in shows like Kiss of the Spider Woman and others, they can absolutely break your heart. with the drama. It's just they were such a talented team, and we've done several of their shows here. We did Curtains a few years ago. We've done 70 Girls 70. We're doing Cabaret coming up, and I just have such respect for them as a team, and have traveled sometimes to see some of these productions that are very rarely done, like The Visit and some of the other shows. Um, but the big three, of course, are Cabaret, Chicago, and a little song they wrote for a movie. We'll talk about that in a moment. And this is another song from Chicago. And this is a song that Amos sings. Amos is Roxy's husband, who's sort of in the shadows in the show, sort of forgotten. And they give him a great song in the style of a Burt Williams or a character who sort of sings a "I'm the forgotten man" kind of thing, which comes in Act Two, and it's one of my favorites. And Emmy twisted my arm and said, "Why don't we do this one tonight?"
Yes.
So if someone stood up in a crowd and raised his voice up way out loud and waved his arm and shook his leg, you'd notice him. If someone in a movie show yelled fire in the second row, this whole place is a powder keg, you'd notice him. And even without clucking like a hen, everyone gets noticed now and then. Unless, of course, this personage should be invisible, inconsequential. Sorry. Me. Cellophane, Mr. Cellophane should have been my name, Mr. Cellophane, 'cause you can look right through me, walk right by me, and never know I'm there. I tell ya, Cellophane, Mr. Cellophane should have been my name, Mr. Cellophane, 'cause you can look right through me, walk right by me, and never know I'm there. Suppose you was a little cat, resided in some person's flat, who fed you fish and scratched your ears, you'd notice him. Suppose you was a woman wed and sleeping in a double bed beside one man for 7 years, you'd notice him. A human being's made of more than air. With all that bulk, you're bound to see him there. Unless that human being next to you is unimpressive, undistinguished, you know who. Should have been my name, Mr. Cellophane, 'cause you can look right through me, walk right by me, and never know I'm there. I tell ya, Cellophane, Mr. Cellophane should have been my name, Mr. Cellophane, 'cause you can look right through me, walk right by me, and never know I'm there. Never even know I'm there. I hope I haven't taken up too much of your time. Thank you, Amos. Thank you, John. Thank you, Fred, for these great, great, great songs. Now, I want to do this next song because it has a great story. Cheetah Rivera was Velma Kelly, and Gwen Verdon was Roxy Hart. She also was the person behind the show. It was her idea to really do this show, and even through Bob Fosse's heart attack and everything else, they kept going. And out of town, they had a lot of problems. There was a character of an agent had a great song called 10%, and they wrote his part out because the show was too long, and they gave his some of his lines to Mama Morton. They had a lot of trouble making the show work the way they wanted it to work, as they often do. And the hardest thing was the finale of the show, because just like in real life, these women aren't really talented. They're talented at killing their men, and they're talented telling us a story. But their final act, how talented should they be?
Mm.
Because they really weren't successes. And so it was a lot of back and forth on this. They tried different things. They had a song called "Loop in the Loop," which if you've ever heard Chicago, the intro, ba da 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 da, loop in the loop, loop in the loop, loop in this whole number they did. They even tried having wind machines when they're singing about the windy city, and they would dance. Originally, they had a song called "It," like Clara Bow. We've got "It." That didn't work. Uh, at one point, they decided to have a musical act because they had those in vaudeville too. And Cheetah admitted that she sort of knew how to play the drums. Gwen said, "I could play the saxophone." There was actually footage of the two of them beating on drums and playing the saxophone as the last act. And none of it worked because the audience wanted to see these two great ladies of the Broadway stage do something good and entertaining. And they didn't care that the real Beulah and Belva, just like you don't care that Sally Bowles is not a great, great, great performer because you still want to be entertained. So they came up with this song called Nowadays, and they followed it with a really incredibly intricate dance. And it's like the last time you could see Gwen Verdon and Cheetah Rivera ever dancing together like that. And I asked Elisa to do it, and we're just too tired. We're not going to do the dance.
Yeah.
No, not tonight.
Not
Emmy was
tonight.
going to jump in
I
there,
was
but we
ready.
didn't do it. And Will's got roller skates on tonight, so he
Stretched.
can't do it. But we thought we'd do the song for it. It's a great little song that sort of ties up the show of Chicago. It's very short and sweet. It's called Nowadays. It's
Good. Isn't it grand? Isn't it great? Isn't it swell? Isn't it fun? Isn't it nowadays? There's men everywhere, jazz everywhere, blues everywhere, life everywhere, joy everywhere. Nowadays, you can like the life you're living. You can live the life you like. You can even marry Harry, but mess around with Ike. And that's good. Isn't it grand? Isn't it great? Isn't it swell? Isn't it fun? Isn't it? But nothing stays. In 50 years or so, it's gonna change, you know. But oh, it's heaven nowadays.
And that last line, of course, it was 50 years later. 1975 was 50 years after the first trial of one of these two ladies, and the play came on Broadway in 1925. So that was sort of a dab at that. Now, a couple more songs that show some of the passion of Kander and Ebb, and then we're gonna do their most famous song as a finale. You like that, Emmy?
I'm excited.
You
We've
excited?
done it, quite
You
a bit
excited?
together.
This is a song that was written for Eliza Minnelli project, a film called New York, New York, which was directed by Martin Scorsese. It's how she met Martin Scorsese, and that's when they started dating. And it was based on a story of a jazz singer, big band singer in the 40s. And it tried to have a Hollywood look to it and tried to have an old Hollywood look. Not everybody got that, that a lot of the sets were supposed to be fake looking and look like an old movie. And they even had a Born in the Trunk sequence in the movie, very much like what Judy had in The Star Is Born, and just like other movies, they got cut down to nothing. When I went to see the film in the in the movie theater, it just showed the last frame of it. And I said, "What was that?" And then I got the record, and it was this whole 10-minute thing called Happy Endings with Larry Kurt about this usherette who becomes a star. I said, "Oh, that's too bad that we didn't see that." And then they restored it into the movie. So if you see New York, New York now, you'll see that song. But they wanted a song like her mother would have sung, "The Man That Got Away" from whatever that movie was, A Star Is Born, 1954, of course, A Star Is Born. And they wrote this song, and it's an absolutely great song. And we're gonna do it for now. Sometimes you're happy, sometimes you're sad, but the world goes round. Sometimes you lose every nickel you had, but the world goes round. Sometimes your dreams get broken in pieces, but that doesn't alter a thing. Take it from me, there's still gonna be a summer, a winter, a fall, and a spring. And sometimes your friend starts treating you bad, but the world goes round. Sometimes your heart breaks with a deafening sound. Somebody loses and somebody wins. Then one day it's kicks, then it's kicks in the shins. But the planet spins and the world goes round and round. The world goes round. Oh, the world goes round. Sometimes your dreams get broken in pieces, but that doesn't matter at all. Take it from me, there's still gonna be a summer, a winter, a spring, and a fall. And sometimes your friend starts treating you bad, but the world goes round. And sometimes your heart breaks with a deafening sound. Somebody loses and somebody wins, and one day it's kicked, then it's kicked in the shins. But the planet spins and the world goes around and around and around and around and round. The world goes round and round and round and round. What do you do after that? We do the next second most famous song ever written by Kander, the title song to Cabaret. And here to sing it, of course, is our own Lisa Prieto.
What good is sitting alone in your room? Come hear the music play. Life is a cabaret, old chum. Come to the cabaret. Put down the knitting, the book, and the broom. Time for a holiday. Life is a cabaret, old chum. Come to the cabaret. Come taste the wine. Come hear the band. Come blow your horn. Start celebrating right this way, or tables waiting. No use permitting some prophet of doom to wipe every smile away. Life is a cabaret, old chum. Come to the cabaret. I used to have this girlfriend known as Elsie, with whom I shared 4 sorted rooms in Chelsea. She wasn't what you'd call a blushing flower. As a matter of fact, she rented by the hour. The day she died, the neighbors came to snicker. Well, that's what comes from too much pills and liquor. But when I saw her laid out like a queen, she was the happiest corpse I'd ever seen. I think of Elsie to this very day. I remember how she turned to me and say, what good is sitting alone in your room? Come hear the music play. Life is a cabaret, old chum. Come to the cabaret. Put down the knitting, the book, and the broom. Time for a holiday. Life is a cabaret, old chum. Come to the cabaret. And as for me, I made my mind up back in Chelsea. When I go, I'm going like Elsie. Start by admitting from cradle to tomb. Isn't that long a stay? Life is a cabaret, old chum. Only a cabaret, old chum. And I love a cabaret.
Miss Lisa Prieto, thank you. I have a funny story about that song. We were doing a show at Eckerd College, a class thing, and I think Emmy was there playing the piano for me. And people would stay in dorm rooms there at the school. It was for elder hostel, it used to be called. Sometimes they'd be hostile elders. My friend Annie, who's watching tonight, was in charge of the whole thing. And one night we were doing our little show, and right up the middle, one of the guys up in the front got up, walked out, and never came back. So I was curious. After about 15 minutes, I said, "Where did he go?" She said, "Oh, he's going back to his room. He'd rather read a book than watch our little show." So I thought, well, okay. So we finished the show, but then I got the whole crowd, and we walked down to outside his door, and we all sang, "What good is sitting alone in the room?" And we also said, "Put down your knitting, the book." And then he laughed and laughed. He never missed another class after that. So Lisa, you're in a show right now over at the 8 o'clock theater, correct? It's opening in August.
Yes, that's
And
right.
Once you got to go see her in Once, and this whole wonderful talented cast of musician, performer,
Yes,
singer, actor, musicians.
we're all playing
And what date
instruments
does
on
that open?
stage.
You know what date it opens?
I believe it
Early
opens.
August.
Yeah, it's August. I want to say it's August 6th.
Okay, well, you can find that at the 8 o'clock theater. Um, we are doing our classes here, and also on the 11th of July, our next soiree is going to be celebrating Irving Berlin's America. It's going to be a lot of fun. Will be out from behind the technical scenes and here singing along with our good friend Francesca Guanciale J. We're going to sing everything from God Bless America to who knows what, but wonderful songs, Alexander's Ragtime Band and such. And of course, these concerts we do, you can watch them anytime on YouTube, and you can tell your friends about them. Also on Saturday mornings, we have Broadway classes about the history of these shows that I have. You can look at our website on those on Zoom. And we are going to open the theater proper September 2nd with a show called 2 by 2. Danny Kaye started it in New York. It's about Noah and the Ark. Music by Richard Rodgers, the man that wrote so many wonderful songs on Broadway, and the lyrics by Martin Charnin, the man that wrote the show Annie. And it's a clever, clever look at Noah and his family and the things they went through back in the old biblical days. It's a very great show, and we're going to have a great time opening here on September 2nd. But meanwhile, we'll have a couple more concerts this summer. We'll have some classes and just beginning the theater ready to go. And we're going to do the most famous song written by John Kander and Fred, the one heard most around the world. Interesting thing, there are two competing versions of this song. It was originally written for Liza Minnelli to sing in the film New York, New York. It's the title song, and she sang it the way that they wrote it exactly. And then a guy named Old Blue Eyes, Frank Sinatra, decided he was going to record it as well. And Sinatra, by that time, did not like to rehearse and did not like to do second takes. So, according to the book Colored Lights, which is a joint autobiography kind of book moments in the life of both John Kander and Fred Ebb. They talk about being at the recording studio and Frank going in, forgetting the whole middle section, making up new words. And then he finished, and Fred was like, "You got to redo it because those aren't the words we wrote." And Frank said, "I'm not redoing it." So there are two competing versions of what you say in the middle. But Fred did not write A number one. That was Frank Sinatra not remembering any of his words. And so tonight we will not be singing A number one. Um, but it is a great song. And I encourage you at home, if you know it, to sing along with us too. It is called New York, New York. It's going to take us out today, and it is our finale. We thank you for being part of our Kander and Ebb celebration. Come back for Irving Berlin in July 11th, and in the beginning of August, we're doing a celebration of Cy Coleman, a wonderful Broadway writer as well. So, Emmy, you ready?
I am.
All right, here we go. Start spreading the news. I'm leaving today. I wanna be a part of it. New York, New York. These vagabond shoes are longing to stray and step around the heart of it. New York, New York. I wanna wake up in the city that doesn't sleep, to find I'm king of the hill, top of the heap. My little town blues are melting away. I'll make a brand new start of it in old New York. If I can make it there, I'll make it anywhere. It's up to you, New York, New York. New York, New York. I wanna wake up in the city that doesn't sleep, to find I'm king of the hill, top of the heap, cream of the crop at the top. Hold on. I sang the wrong lyrics there. I just said I said Sinatra did it, and I quit.
No, you have to finish. We're
All right,
so
here we go.
close to being done.
Let's go back from where it does the turnaround. No, I'm not like Sinatra. I don't have his money, at least. New York, New York. I wanna wake up in the city that doesn't sleep, to find I'm king of the hill, head of the list, cream of the crop at the top of the heap. My little town blues are melting away. I'll make a brand new start of it